I did want to take just a few minutes to speak to some history that's trying to repeat itself over the last few days here in Georgia. Many of you will recall that in the final weeks of 2020, I clearly and repeatedly said that I would not be calling a special session of the General Assembly to overturn the 2020 election results because such an action would have been unconstitutional. It was that simple. Fast forward today, nearly 3 years later, memories are fading fast. There have been calls by one individual in the General Assembly and echoed outside of these walls by the former president for a special session that would ignore current Georgia law and directly interfere with the proceedings of a separate but equal branch of government. Now, my concerns with the Fulton County District Attorney's handling of this case and the special purpose grand jury have been well documented. We are now seeing what happens when prosecutors move forward with highly charged indictments and trials in the middle of an election. Simply put, it sows distrust and provides easy pickings for those who see the district attorney's action as guided by politics. But let me be clear. We have a law in the state of Georgia that clearly outlines the legal steps that can be taken if constituents believe their local prosecutors are violating their oath by engaging in unethical or illegal behavior. Up to this point, I have not seen any evidence that D.A. Willis's actions or lack thereof warrant action by the Prosecuting Attorney Oversight Commission. But that will ultimately be a decision that the commission will make. Regardless, in my mind, a special session of the General Assembly to end run around this law is not feasible and may ultimately prove to be unconstitutional. The bottom line is that in the state of Georgia, as long as I'm governor, we're going to follow the law and the Constitution, regardless of who it helps or harms politically.
Turns out another effort by the MAGA faction of the Republican Party to subvert democracy has failed in Georgia. This is Georgia's Republican Governor Brian Kemp denying an effort by some unnamed individual who was calling for a special legislative session who Kemp had said, quote, would ignore current Georgia law and directly interfere with the proceedings of a separate but equal branch of government. And while he didn't name the person, Georgia State Senator Colton Moore, vice chairman of the State Freedom Caucus, because of course, is leading calls for Kemp to hold a special legislative session to impeach Fani Willis. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out why Moore is doing this, because it didn't take long for Donald Trump to give him the little pat on the head that he was looking for. Trump posted on Truth Social, highly respected Georgia State Senator Colton Moore deserves the thanks and congratulations of everyone for having the courage and conviction to fight the radical left lunatics who are so badly hurting the great state of Georgia and the USA itself. Failed DA Fani Willis, who has allowed Atlanta, Fulton County, to become a record-setting murder and violent crime war zone with almost no retribution, shockingly indicted your favorite president, me, for a perfect phone call. She is bad for America. And I gotta say, it really is amazing to watch all of these little invertebrate continue to line up behind Trump, even as the nation is watching a raft of his previous allies getting prosecuted. The cognitive dissonance within the MAGA movement really is something to behold. That they can see in real time what happens when you kowtow to Trump, and yet still opt to kowtow to Trump. Just lemmings lining up to walk off the cliff. Now, this isn't the only effort by Georgia Republicans to attack Fani Willis for the apparent crime of prosecuting their political ally. Republicans in that state also created a new law empowering a commission to remove district attorneys, which goes into effect on October 1st. The law was initially created to remove progressive DAs who weren't prosecuting enough crime, and so, of course, now they're planning on using it to remove Fani Willis for prosecuting too much crime. In other words, Republicans are going to try to use the commission to remove Fani Willis for enforcing the law, which was the whole reason that this bill was presumably passed, because it's 2023, and as far as Republicans are concerned, nothing actually matters anymore. And of course, you wouldn't be surprised to find out that every single person who will serve on this commission will have been appointed by Republicans, meaning that this commission itself will effectively be a Republican commission. Whether it's an extension of the MAGA-aligned State Freedom Caucus or a more law-minded conservative ideology remains to be seen, but clearly, many partisan Republicans are hoping to use this commission as a workaround in removing a district attorney who they see as a threat to their deity, Donald Trump. And if we know anything about the modern GOP, it's that they stand for nothing if not protecting that man at all costs. I spoke with my Democracy Watch co-host and premier voting rights attorney Mark Elias about the legality of such a move by Georgia Republicans, and this is what he had to say.
the believed targets of this bill, and this is what makes this so galling. The believed targets of this bill initially were progressive prosecutors who were not bringing enough criminal prosecutions. So the Republicans created this in the legislature to go after criminal justice reform-minded prosecutors who might not be prosecuting certain kinds of low-level offenses. And so a group of them has already sued to block this law from going into effect because they believe it violates separation of powers. It would take away or limit prosecutorial discretion. And so it's not at all clear that this law will ever go into effect, but you can see, Brian, the hypocrisy of this, which is a bill that Republicans put forward to ensure the law is aggressively prosecuted. They are now threatening when it is being used, when the law is being aggressively prosecuted.
Well, if the intent of these Republicans was to go after progressive DAs who weren't prosecuting enough, then will that make their argument in court when this does come before a court? Will that make it more difficult given that Fani Willis is just prosecuting too much now?
Yeah, I think that two things. First, the case that's already been filed, I think is a pretty strong case. I spent some time actually reading the pleadings, and there's a good argument that because of the way the Georgia prosecutor system is structured, that it actually is a violation of separation of powers. So I think on the merits, setting aside, Willis and this particular case, I think that the plaintiffs had a pretty strong argument. I think with respect to her, Fani Willis is doing everything she's supposed to do the right way. I mean, she's aggressively prosecuting a law. She worked diligently with a grand jury. She has sought to advance these cases quickly on the docket, right? She's not dawdling in a way that you could say, well, she indicted them and now she doesn't want them to get their day in court. She's aggressively moving on the docket. So I think if ever this complaint was filed and it actually was taken seriously by this new entity, I think it would, any effort to discipline her would run into a buzzsaw in the courts.
Now, I should note that if Republicans do somehow manage to use this commission to successfully remove Fani Willis from her post, the prosecution of Donald Trump and his 18 co-defendants in Fulton County won't go away. It'll almost assuredly be taken up by the next in command, who, again, assuredly has a full mastery of the facts surrounding this case. Of course, that's not to say that Republicans wouldn't again use that commission to remove that person, followed by the next and the next, but at least know that until they're able to remove every prosecutor who comes next in line, that these prosecutions will continue to move forward regardless of the antics put forward by these MAGA Republicans. Now, I do have one more thought about Brian Kemp, at the risk that you walk away from this video thinking that he's the white knight for democracy that we've been waiting for. I want to be clear here. Just because Brian Kemp is not willing to aid Donald Trump and his band of MAGA acolytes in subverting an election does not make him some pro-democracy hero. Here again is Mark Elias making that exact point. Now, we've seen Brian Kemp, who is the governor of Georgia, being floated as this moderate Republican alternative to Donald Trump and the Trump wing of the Republican Party. Based on the laws that you've had a lot of experience litigating against, based on the laws that Brian Kemp has signed into law, is he as moderate as his branding would suggest?
No, Brian Kemp is an unrepentant vote suppressor. So let me say the nicest thing I can say about Brian Kemp. He did not join a felony racketeering enterprise.
Yeah, bar's pretty low these days.
So that's what I could say about Brian Kemp, is that he did not join a conspiracy to deprive Georgians their right to vote. He did not join a state-level racketeering enterprise. But beyond that, Brian Kemp is just an absolute proud card-carrying vote suppressor. I mean, Brian Kemp supported SB 202. Brian Kemp endorsed SB 202. Brian Kemp is defending SB 202. Brian Kemp likes voter suppression laws. So there is no hero to be found in the governor's mansion of Georgia. Remember him sitting in front of that painting of a plantation when he signed SB 202. Like, he's not a good guy. Yeah. He is, as I said, I'll end with a compliment. He is not currently under indictment in Georgia or federally because he did not join a felony conspiracy to deprive people of the right to vote or a racketeering enterprise in Georgia.
So I get that the Republican Party's fall from grace has been dramatic, but let's not lose perspective here. The bar cannot be so low that simply not supporting efforts to destroy democracy makes you some savior of it. If nothing else, the fact that it may come across this way is a testament to just how dangerous, how despotic, how unprincipled the modern Republican Party has become. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to the channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.